Okay, my name is Eric Caston with the AstaReal Group. I'm very happy for the opportunity to talk to you today about natural astaxanthin's benefits for the heart, its cardiovascular benefits. This year, 2018, is really a very special year for AstaReal. This is the 30th year that we've been engaged in research and development of the natural astaxanthin molecule. And you can see that research on astaxanthin has really grown. There's now close to 2,000 scientific studies on astaxanthin. There have been 114 human clinical studies, and we're very happy to say that 51% of those studies were done using the AstaReal material. So 30 years of research and development in 2018. If we look at the breakdown of the studies, there have been 12 AstaReal studies on muscle health. There have been 16 AstaReal studies on the benefits for the eye, and all of the research that was done on computer vision syndrome, all of that data comes from AstaReal studies. 6 studies on astaxanthin's benefits for skin, 4 studies for cognitive health, and what we're going to be talking about today, 13 benefits using the AstaReal material to show benefits for cardiovascular health. Okay. This is the AstaReal Group. We're producing this natural astaxanthin in Sweden and then also in the United States. We do research and development and some advanced processing in Japan. As you can see, we now have sales offices worldwide. So this is an important point for us. All of our material is coming from the United States or Sweden with just some processing done in Japan. Today we'll be focusing on oxidative stress and inflammation because that's where astaxanthin can offer some benefits. I don't think we need to point out that cardiovascular disease is a global problem. The countries here in dark blue are the countries that have higher rates of cardiovascular disease or heart disease. Of course, the United States, where I'm from, has very high levels. Australia, we have some Australians out there also at risk of cardiovascular disease, but also Japan, and we can see Taiwan as well have high rates of cardiovascular disease. Still the #1 cause of death in the United States. This is from 2016, even more than cancer. And if we look at Taiwan, these are from 2017, 2018 headlines. Second leading cause of death in Taiwan. Every 25 minutes someone is dying of heart disease. So what should we do? Obviously heart disease, we're recommending lifestyle changes, improving your diet, improving your exercise. We're not presenting astaxanthin is a magic bullet that can fix everything, but we want to show you that when you combine it with lifestyle changes, it can have some really good benefits. Okay? First, we need to discuss briefly what is astaxanthin. This is the astaxanthin molecule. This is a natural carotenoid, which is a pigment found in many marine animals. We're interested in it because it's one of the strongest antioxidants that we've found, 110 times stronger than vitamin E, 6,000 times stronger than vitamin C. A very potent antioxidant. Where does it come from? We take our natural astaxanthin from this algae. So this algae is at the base of the food chain, and shrimp will eat the algae, or krill will eat the algae. Then salmon will eat the shrimp, and it goes up the food chain. So you can find astaxanthin in salmon. If you look at that nice pink salmon steak, that color is astaxanthin, the pink color of lobsters and crabs and shrimp. All of those are astaxanthin, but it's difficult to get enough astaxanthin in your diet from just seafood, and then of course some people are vegetarian, so they're not going to take seafood anyway. So all of our astaxanthin comes from this algae. We think that's an important point. The algae does something very interesting. When it's under stress in the environment, it's normally a green algae, but then it will produce astaxanthin to protect itself. So when this algae cell becomes bright red, it's then full of astaxanthin, and the astaxanthin is playing a protective role in nature. So even in the algae, it's protecting cells from oxidative stress. This algae form, we think, is really the only form of algae, or the only form of astaxanthin that you should consider taking. And we're going to show one slide to illustrate this. This is a mouse study. Okay? So mice were given 3 types of astaxanthin for 5 weeks. Here in red, they were given the natural astaxanthin from algae. In orange, they were given astaxanthin from yeast, which is a little bit of a different form. And then finally, in blue, they were given synthetic astaxanthin. And what we see here is the accumulation of the astaxanthin in the body of the mice. And you can see that there was good accumulation in the heart and liver with the natural algae astaxanthin, but very little accumulation of the yeast astaxanthin or the synthetic astaxanthin. If anybody wants to talk about why that would be, we can maybe try to answer that during Q&A, or you can come by our booth. But there are some molecular differences between natural algae astaxanthin and synthetic Pfaffia. I know in Taiwan there's some GMO astaxanthin from E. coli. All of those other forms really don't absorb well. So we would really recommend only considering natural algae astaxanthin for a supplement. Okay? As we can see, it has health benefits throughout the body, but let's go ahead and focus on the benefits for the cardiovascular system. The next set of slides I'm going to show you will show that astaxanthin really does decrease oxidative stress in the body, reduces lipid peroxidation, specifically protects red blood cells, improves blood flow, and can also increase nitric oxide. Okay? All of your cells, of course, have a cell membrane. That cell membrane is made from lipids, and those can be damaged by oxidative stress. So we're going to see that astaxanthin is specifically a molecule that can protect membranes from oxidative stress. This is a study in overweight subjects. Of course, those of us that are overweight have higher levels of oxidative stress. And these subjects were given a dose of astaxanthin for about 6 weeks. And here on the top, you can see reduction in these two biomarkers for oxidative stress and lipid peroxidation, but you can see increases of superoxide dismutase and your body's total antioxidant capacity. So yes, in vitro, it's 6,000 times stronger than vitamin C, but in the body, it's also functioning to reduce oxidative stress and support your body's own antioxidant defense system. This is in smokers. Smoking, of course, is also a cause of cardiovascular disease. Even in smokers taking 5 milligrams per day, we see that the superoxide dismutase, the total antioxidant capacity, is increased when taking astaxanthin. Okay? The same smoker study, here we see two biomarkers for oxidative stress reduced by taking astaxanthin. So this benefit of reducing oxidative stress in the body would, of course, hopefully contribute to reducing the risk of cardiovascular disease. This is an interesting study because this looks specifically at the red blood cells. Okay? Here it says the present human trial shows that when human subjects ingest astaxanthin, it accumulates in the red blood cells themselves. So you can see here, blue is before taking astaxanthin, red is the concentration after taking astaxanthin. They found it specifically in the red blood cell membrane, and this is the measure of oxidative stress or peroxidation of those red blood cells. You can see again here in red, the amount of hydroperoxides were reduced. So it's in the red blood cells reducing oxidation. It is able to do that because of this characteristic of the molecule. It has polar groups on the ends of the molecule. The center of the molecule is nonpolar, and this makes it polar, nonpolar, polar. Luckily, this is the same structure as your cell membrane and your mitochondrial membrane. So you can see here astaxanthin can actually span across the membrane and be in the membrane to protect it from oxidative stress. You can see vitamin C on the outside of the membrane, beta-carotene on the inside of the membrane, but we believe that only astaxanthin has this ability to protect membranes specifically. So why would that be important? Okay? In your body you have many capillaries, these very small blood vessels, and the red blood cell is actually slightly larger than the smallest of these capillaries. So your red blood cell will actually have to deform and bend a bit to pass through your capillaries and ensure good blood flow. What this study found is when these red blood cells become damaged, they're not able to flex and deform properly to go through the capillaries. So by taking the astaxanthin, we can help improve the flexibility and performance of these red blood cells. So because of that, we see improvements in circulation in subjects taking astaxanthin. This is a study from Japan. I don't know if this is other countries, but in Japan, everyone is always complaining about stiff shoulders. This is just, oh, my shoulders are stiff, my shoulders are stiff. They have lots of products for that. So this actually used Doppler imaging to check the capillary blood flow in the shoulders of patients in Japan. And what we saw was that after taking astaxanthin, they had a 20% increase in the capillary blood flow in the shoulders. So we have a nice human clinical study showing that it improves blood flow. This is accelerating blood flow. So this was 6 milligrams of astaxanthin per day for only 10-day period. After taking the astaxanthin, they put it into a microchannel analyzer, and the blood flowed more quickly. Okay? So flowing through these very small channels, the blood cells were able to deform and flex and flow more easily. Finally, we have a study showing that astaxanthin can improve the capillary blood flow in the eye. So this is very important for eye health. Here in the choroidal area, we saw a 16% increase in blood flow. So we've got some very nice studies that show that astaxanthin can improve blood flow and circulation by protecting the red blood cell. It has one more mechanism. The nitric oxide helps to relax vessels to allow blood to flow more quickly. Here we have a study that's in an animal model. This is in a diabetic mouse model, but we see that taking the astaxanthin increased the levels of an enzyme that produces nitric oxide. So this should allow the blood vessels to relax and blood flow more easily. So some very nice studies showing that astaxanthin can help in circulation. Next set of studies, we're going to look at its effects on lipids, reduction in triglycerides, increasing in HDL, reduction of LDL, and inhibiting LDL oxidation. Okay. These are two studies showing that astaxanthin can reduce serum triglycerides. The first study was an open label study. We saw a 25% reduction in triglycerides. Here with a little bit of a higher dose, but a placebo-controlled study, we saw that 6 milligrams and 12 milligrams reduced triglycerides. Of course, LDL is very important, but I think the consensus lately is that perhaps triglycerides are even more important to keep down to reduce your risk of cardiovascular disease. So we've got some very nice studies here showing that astaxanthin can reduce triglycerides in human subjects. It does also reduce LDL. This was in overweight subjects, but here we saw a significant reduction in LDL and also the apolipoprotein that's associated with the LDL. There was an increase in HDL, but it did not quite reach significance in this study. But we do have another study in which astaxanthin at 6 milligrams and 12 milligrams also increased HDL significantly and reduced triglycerides significantly. So taking astaxanthin really does seem to improve the lipid profile. Okay? This is a very busy slide, but it shows the progression of arteriosclerosis, and we just want to look at part of this. We already said that astaxanthin can reduce this LDL, but what happens is this LDL will go into the artery wall. Once it gets in the artery wall, it will become oxidized. After it becomes oxidized, your body's macrophages will absorb that LDL and then become trapped in the artery, and this will contribute to the plaque that we see in arteriosclerosis. So this is really a key step, is the LDL not just entering the artery, but entering the artery and then becoming oxidized. Okay. So here we have a study where subjects were given astaxanthin. After taking the astaxanthin, we withdrew the blood, put it into a test tube, and tried to oxidize the LDL in the blood. And you can see that the lag time, or the time required to oxidize the LDL, was significantly increased by the astaxanthin. So this shows that astaxanthin should be able to protect the LDL from oxidizing. If you inhibit that step, then you inhibit the macrophage from absorbing the LDL, forming this foam cell, which then contribute to arteriosclerosis. And you can see a quote from the researchers there saying that astaxanthin, through this mechanism, should be able to have potential to inhibit arteriosclerosis. Okay. There's another step. Once you have this buildup of plaque, this can rupture and form a clot, which is of course not good. What causes that to rupture, or part of what causes that to rupture, are enzymes called matrix metalloproteinases. they will degrade the cap of this buildup of plaque. That will cause a rupture, and then you'll have an event there. So we actually have some studies showing that astaxanthin can inhibit these matrix metalloproteinases. Won't go into details on this too much, but you can see the quote from the researcher saying that by inhibiting the matrix metalloproteinases, this should contribute to vascular stability, or stability of the plaque in those cells. So some very interesting research on astaxanthin's potential to inhibit the development of atherosclerosis. Okay? Next, we want to look at blood pressure. Blood pressure is, of course, very important. We'll start with this animal study. Here's another mice here. This was a spontaneous hypertensive mice. This was a mouse that was bred to have high blood pressure. And you can see that these mice without astaxanthin have very narrow vessels. And if you look at the wall of these vessels, the elastin inside of the vessel is disorganized and not in good condition. But these same high blood pressure mice, when they're given astaxanthin, we can see that the size of the vessel is increased. And if we look at the cross section, you can see that the elastin bundles are also in better condition. This same study found that astaxanthin reduced the blood pressure in this animal model. We have 2 studies in humans showing that astaxanthin can reduce blood pressure. One study was in postmenopausal women who will sometimes have higher levels of blood pressure. The other was in healthy subjects. And in both of these studies, we saw not a huge reduction in blood pressure, but what we would call a significant reduction in blood pressure certainly would be beneficial. Next, we want to talk about astaxanthin supporting the heart as a mitochondrial nutrient. This is kind of a joke that's going around in the United States that after 4 years of high school, the only thing that anybody remembers is that the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. Okay? So we just want to remind ourselves of that today. Your mitochondria is the organelle inside of your cell that is producing energy for all of the cells in your body. And to contrast the heart muscle to the bicep, in your bicep, if you're working out, hopefully you've got about 200 mitochondria per cell. In heart muscles, you'll have up to 5,000 mitochondria per cell, because of course this heart muscle is beating 24 hours a day continuously. So anything that we can do to support and improve the health of the mitochondria should also be beneficial for the heart. Astaxanthin has 3 different mechanisms by which it can improve mitochondrial health. One, we would say that it turbocharges the mitochondrial engines by helping your mitochondria to use more fat. It protects the mitochondria from reactive oxygen species and oxidative stress. And then finally, it increases mitochondrial biogenesis, meaning it helps you to make more mitochondria. Okay? The first, I think, is easier to explain with this slide. But your mitochondria can use carbohydrates for energy. Here we see in the blue arrow. But it can also use free fatty acids as energy. So there's been several studies that show that astaxanthin helps to increase the input of the fatty acids into the mitochondria. So you can upregulate this pathway of inputting fatty acids into the mitochondria and therefore produce more ATP and more energy. Okay? This is through the CPT1 system, which is a little bit too technical for me to get into. But again, any questions about that, we'd be happy to discuss later or maybe during the question session. Okay? But when you produce energy, or the mitochondria produces energy, a byproduct of that is reactive oxygen species, and those can damage the functioning of the mitochondria. So more energy will unfortunately mean more reactive oxygen species. So this was human cells in vitro. In green here, you can visualize the mitochondria. Red, you're visualizing the reactive oxygen species. And they raise the levels of oxidative stress by exposing these cells to high levels of sugar, which of course most of us are doing through our modern diet. You can see without astaxanthin, you have more intense color showing that the reactive oxygen species were increased. This decrease in red color is showing that astaxanthin can reduce reactive oxygen species production. So another mechanism of protecting the mitochondria. Okay. Here we're looking at mitochondrial membrane potential. Again, high levels of reactive oxygen species can inhibit the mitochondrial membrane potential. These dark orange and red colors are good. This means the mitochondrial membrane potential is high. Again, when we add astaxanthin to cells, we see higher mitochondrial membrane potential, indicating that the astaxanthin is protecting the mitochondria and helping them to function better. We also mentioned that astaxanthin can increase mitochondrial biogenesis. This was an animal study that showed that astaxanthin increased expression of PGC1 alpha. PGC1 alpha is associated with biogenesis, or increasing the number of mitochondria in your cell. This is quite new. We actually found this study last week. Cardiolipin is an integral part of the mitochondrial membrane. This is also very easily damaged by reactive oxygen species. Cardiolipin is also associated with different forms of cardiovascular disease. Again, we saw that astaxanthin in the mitochondrial membrane protected this cardiolipin, which is a key part of the mitochondria. So lately at AstaReal, we've really been pushing astaxanthin as not just an antioxidant, but as a mitochondrial nutrient, because it has all of these different benefits that protect the mitochondria, and then that also helps to protect heart health. Okay. Here is an animal study that is showing exactly what we would want to see. We see that the mitochondrial ATP production is improved. Mitochondrial density, or the amount of mitochondria in the cell, are improved. So we are seeing that astaxanthin is improving power output and improving the number of mitochondria. Okay. This is not specifically about astaxanthin, but I saw this story last week because we've been thinking a lot about mitochondria, and thought it was really an amazing story. Please go to the New York Times and check this out. But this story is quite fascinating. They had an infant that had complications and had surgery. During the surgery, the infant's heart muscle was damaged and was beating very weakly. So what the doctors did was they took some healthy muscle cells, they extracted only the mitochondria from the muscle cells, and then they injected the baby's own mitochondria into the damaged heart muscle. And they said in a few days it was beating like a normal heart and functioning properly. So this mitochondrial transplant from the same person, really fascinating, and really shows how important the mitochondria are to human health, and to heart health. So we have actually a similar study related to astaxanthin that happened in Japan. Okay? This, I want to point out, this is a case study. This is not a clinical study, but a very interesting case study from Japan. And there is a doctor in Japan that has been treating patients that don't respond to normal therapy for heart failure with a combination of CoQ10 and astaxanthin. And the doctor's thinking is CoQ10 is very good for the mitochondria, astaxanthin is very good for the mitochondria, and when you have patients with heart failure where it's not beating very well, let's try the astaxanthin when conventional therapy has not worked. And I wish I could show you the video, but NHK did not give me permission to show their video in a public forum. But this is from NHK World, a program called Medical Frontiers, and they had a 30-minute segment on the benefits of astaxanthin. And you probably shouldn't do it, but I think someone has posted it online illegally. You can probably find it if you want to see the video. But it's really remarkable. Before taking astaxanthin, you can see this patient's heart was very enlarged. The beating was very weak. Okay? The patient said, I can't play golf anymore. I can barely walk up the stairs. Quality of life was very bad. Okay? Of course, the doctor had tried conventional therapy. He decided to give the patient a combination of 12 milligrams of astaxanthin plus CoQ10. After taking that combination for more than a year, you can see there's a really dramatic reduction in the size of the heart. And when they measured the output of the heart, that was also really dramatically improved. So we think we're hoping this doctor will do a clinical study. He's treated more than 50 patients in this manner in Japan. And there's several products in Japan that do combine CoQ10 with astaxanthin. We think a very, very nice formula for cardiovascular health. Okay? So we really think that astaxanthin is a great choice for a nutraceutical product protecting cardiovascular health. But if you're taking astaxanthin for your heart, you may notice some side effects. But all of these side effects are good side effects. Okay? I'm joking, no side effects, actually other benefits that I wanted to mention very quickly. In addition to the heart benefits, we've seen human studies that showing astaxanthin helps to improve skin elasticity, prevent moisture loss, inhibit collagen-damaging enzymes. The same matrix metalloproteinases we talked about in the heart also degrade the elastin and collagen in the skin, reducing fine wrinkles, and also shrinking age spots. So good benefits for the skin. For eye health, we have seen a reduction of eye fatigue related to computer vision syndrome, improved accommodation. That means your eye's ability to change focus. The #1 eye supplement product in Japan over the last year and a half has been a product that combines lutein with astaxanthin to improve the focusing ability of the eye. When we get older, we have to stretch out like this. This helps to relieve that problem. Because you have small muscles in your eye, the same as your heart is a muscle, astaxanthin helping the muscles in the eye as well. And for your large muscle groups as well, we've seen improved muscle performance and endurance in athletes. We've seen that it improves the capillaries during inactivity. We've already talked about the mitochondrial benefits, and it also has benefits for older people with sarcopenia, protecting muscle mass and protecting muscle strength in older patients. Okay? Astaxanthin is quite flexible. Originally, it is an oil, so we're extracting the oil from the algae that we talked about at the beginning. Once this oil is extracted, this oil can be put directly into a soft gel. This is probably the most common form of astaxanthin. But astaxanthin from AstaReal also can be water soluble. It is not very easy to take the oil and create a water soluble liquid, but at our R&D facility in Japan, we have developed what we call AstaReal Clear, which is a transparent water soluble astaxanthin. And this also has reduced algae flavor. Some people say that astaxanthin has a bit of an ocean flavor or a marine flavor. This product helps to reduce that quite a bit. We also have water-soluble powders that can be used in sachets. And then finally, we have powders that can be put into a 2-piece capsule or a direct compression tablet. Okay? Just 1 or 2 more slides to pitch our company in particular. We are the world's largest producer of astaxanthin as far as we know. And what makes our production quite different is that we have a completely indoor system. Okay? Before we showed you the algae that has to transition from green to red. We do this in an indoor clean room type environment where we can really control the environment of the algae and help control the process of changing from green to red. That gives us higher potency astaxanthin, higher quality astaxanthin from using the indoor production system. And that also, of course, protects us from any environmental contaminants that are out there. So we are producing in this indoor system in both the United States and Sweden. Okay? The last pitch for us, we would say we are the most studied brand of astaxanthin. We do have this unique cultivation system. We're one of the few companies that has done everything correctly in the United States. We've completed the FDA GRAS process and also the new dietary ingredient notification process. We are growing only in the United States and Sweden. Sometimes you'll see some astaxanthin that comes from other countries, but it's actually been imported from China and then extracted in the third country. All of our production in the USA and Sweden. We have now not 20 years, but 30 years of research and development on natural algae astaxanthin and the technology to produce truly water-soluble astaxanthin ingredients. Okay? So it looks like I went maybe a little bit too quickly but that's good because that means hopefully we'll have some time for questions. Would love to have some questions now. If not, you can find us at booth J1124. And if anybody wants to get into the real details of some of those studies, we can probably share the studies with you and have a nice chat about the benefits of astaxanthin. Thank you very much.